Hello everyone, welcome to this edition of the news on EQUINOXE television. We are live from Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. I am Babla Jonathan. In our top stories in this edition of the news, the government of the Republic of Cameroon intensifies the fight against insecurity in the crisis-hit northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon with the use of vigilante committees. The governor of the northwest region handed over some equipment to some individuals in the northwest region of the country to help the armed forces in the fight against insecurity in their municipalities. And out of the country, Zimbabwe has declared another public holiday in protest to sanctions by the United States on some government officials. Those were our top stories. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on this edition of the news. We begin in the crisis-hit northwest region of the Republic of Cameroon, where the situation remains precarious. The situation remains disturbing as the Anglophone crisis has continued deepening for close to 3 years today, while government tarries to provide concrete solutions to the socio-political and security tensions in those parts of the country, the northwest and the southwest regions of the country. While hundreds of thousands have been displaced, many have been killed, and of course properties destroyed, and the killings have continued even after the major national dialogue intended to find a way out of the Anglophone crisis, and government is now using vigilante committees to fight against insecurity in parts of the two Anglophone regions of the country. In the northwest region, Governor Adolphe Lily Lafrique handed over some equipment to persons who have grouped themselves together in vigilante committees, notably in Messager and Nkambe. It is, of course, in the northwest region of the country, and the Governor Adolphe Lily Lafrique went handing over some motorcycles and other equipments to the persons in order to help them in their efforts to fight against insecurity in their respective communities. And the governor also told them that they will always have government support, and of course they have to continue to be good citizens, even though some of them were complaining that they have been attacked by individuals and they have been accused of assisting or helping the elements of the National Armed Forces to commit some atrocities, notably breaking into people's houses in those parts of the country, notably in Messager and in Nkambe. It is, of course, in the northwest region of the country. Take a listen to Governor Adolphe Lily Lafrique in this extract sent to us by our correspondent Stella Mbu.
Some of those preoccupations has been given an answer by the regional delegate. Since all of them were not here with me today, I'm going along with those preoccupations that are going soon to be addressed by the authority that be in Bamenda. But I would like to remind here that during the works of the major dialogue, all those issues were discussed in the various committees, and the resolution were arrived at, and a plan of action to rebuild the northwest region and the southwest region has been drawn. A plan to reconcile the population in between them and their authorities, traditional ones, administrative one, religious one has been drawn, that are going to be implemented in the region of the northwest region, starting from the grassroots level, because the desired peace, the needed peace, will not come from the sky to our families, to our communities. We have to work hard to bring back long-lasting peace in our various communities.
And according to the Popular Action Party and many other politicians and civil society leaders in and out of Cameroon, for that peace to return in the northwest and southwest regions of the country, there must be a ceasefire. All those who have been arrested and detained in connection to the Anglophone crisis, including Sisiku Ayuktabe and the other 9 Anglophone leaders detained at the Kondengi Maximum Security Prison, must be freed. And of course, those in the diaspora granted general amnesty in order to find a way out of the Anglophone crisis. And speaking during the installation of some of its officials in the nation's political capital, Yaoundé, the president of the Popular Action Party, Njang Denis, said this is the only way out of the Anglophone crisis, and that without this, all what is being done will produce no result. And talking about the national dialogue which took place in Yaoundé, he said no dialogue took place. It was a monologue and not a dialogue, and cannot produce expected results, notably a return to normalcy in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. And the Anglophone crisis, according to the PAP, there must be dialogue for the Anglophone crisis to be solved. And of course, I indicated earlier that he was speaking during the installation of some officials of the party in Yaoundé, and he also said that the recent incident in Saint-Milima in the south region of Cameroon, where some violence erupted after the killing of a commercial motorbike rider, goes a long way to show the bad and delicate state of Cameroon today. And he condemned the point that until now nobody has been arrested after the destructions, notably in shops and other parts of the town of Saint-Milima in the east or south region of the Republic of Cameroon. Now we're going to take a look at the economic state of Cameroon, badly affected by the Anglophone crisis, coupled with many other challenges affecting the different economic spheres of Cameroon. For me, Armstrong Sander has more.
Crisis is one of the problems faced by the agricultural sector in Cameroon, especially with regards to productivity and exportation. Cameroon's Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Gabriel Bayrobe, says banana exportation, for example, has witnessed a 40% drop as production, mainly done in the Anglophone regions, has been paralyzed by the Anglophone crisis. But he insists that is not the only problem.
I explored all the opportunities for agriculture, for investors. In agriculture, you have some problem of funding, the problem of value chain, because we need to transform our products, our crops, in order to add income for the producer. And we need to have some storage to offer a very good market for the producer. We are working on the productivity. We supply improved seed, we supply fertilizer, we supply good agriculture practice, but the agriculture need to income, need to ameliorate his livelihood.
While the government thinks the problem can better be resolved by the private sector, especially young entrepreneurs, present their challenges.
Youth in entrepreneurship have a lot of things to offer. Most often when we come to our government, they think that we are coming to ask for something new. If they don't give us the opportunity to highlight our work, the most important marketing strategy is your product. And many youth have a lot of amazing products, but they don't have people who can show people that they are going through these challenges to find something useful for their environment. I propose to our government to meet with young people and discuss exactly which challenges they have on the field.
After listening to private investors at the GICAM headquarters in Douala, the government of Cameroon says it will ameliorate policies in order to permit a better investment environment in Cameroon, especially for individuals wishing to invest in the agricultural or animal husbandry and fishery domains.
And speaking as head of a delegation of 3 government ministers in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala, today, Minister Henry Eyebe Ayisi said there is a legal framework in Cameroon to facilitate access to land for those who want to invest in the priority sectors. Take a listen.
To give the opportunities for promoters and investors to discover that we have a legal framework. We have provisions to assist the investors, to facilitate access to land, to secure those who have acquired titles, who need land, those who need land to be in situation to realize, to implement their project. We assure them that the ministry is working through the, let's say, pertinent provisions to assure them that land is available. And if we consider the past, we are working to to accelerate the process and to solve problems that have been noted, and to assure them to that the message that of collaboration within the government, between the ministries, so that solutions be found for any problem, and particularly MINCAF is there under the supervision of His Excellency Prime Minister to implement the directives of the head of state, His Excellency President Paul Biya.
A man-made flood hits the Sable neighborhood in the Douala 5 municipality, and the inhabitants are suffering because of that incident, which is said to have been provoked by the underground installation of some high-tension cables. Immaculate Fogbe has more.
Looking at these images, one would think the floods is an outcome of the heavy downpour. But the case this time around is different, as the floods is as a result of the poor installation of high-tension cables underground by the company in charge of distributing electricity in Cameroon. We are in Bonamusari in the Douala 5 municipality. A group of persons have been digging the road so as to install cables underground. They have been working here for the past 10 days. We are surprised with what we are seeing. Victims of the floods decry the state which they find themselves in, which has resulted to enormous material damages. I was not at home when it started. It was thanks to the intervention of my neighbors that my kids were rescued. When my neighbors called to explain to me what had happened, it was then that I asked what caused the floods, and they told me some persons came and dug up the entrance of my house. If I never had neighbors, that means my children would have been dead by now. The victim describes those in charge of the works as being insensitive to their plight, as no one could be seen on the site trying to remedy the situation. What pains me most is that when I tried complaining, they gave me silly excuses that it is the government handling the project. So my question is this the government's house? I am the one facing the consequences. No matter what, they would have looked for solutions, but they keep telling us that it is the government, as if I am living with the government. In the meantime, the population of Sable Bonamusari are now paying the price, as they have incurred enormous material damages. They hope that those in charge of the project will see into it that the situation is addressed soonest.
Out of Cameroon, Zimbabwe has declared a new public holiday to protest against United States sanctions. The country of President Emerson Mnangagwa says sanctions imposed on her by the United States of America are hurting her economy. The additional public holiday comes with a state-sponsored festival. Acting Zimbabwean Information Minister Amon Muriwa has said Anti-Sanctions Day will be marked on October 25th, 2019, and thousands of people are expected to move into the country's capital. Minister Amon said yesterday that the holiday is to further amplify the importance of the day on the economic emancipation and well-being of Zimbabwe. And dozens of Zimbabwean officials, including the president Emerson Mnangagwa, have faced years of U.S. sanctions over alleged human rights violations. President Mnangagwa has turned the sanction into a rallying cry. He blamed them for the collapsing economy. The U.S. says the sanctions are not against the whole government and that they do not affect business between the two countries. Talking Point is up next. She is one of the leading female opposition politicians in the Republic of Cameroon. She and her followers have been fighting or struggling for a political transition in Cameroon. Kabangwala Edi is a guest in this edition of the news. Madam the President, you're welcome.
Thank you. A pleasure to be here.
You are the president of the Cameroon People's Party, the CPP. Since the major national dialogue took place in Yaoundé, we've not heard you on this platform. As far as that event is concerned, the PAP president, Njang said there was no dialogue. It can't produce anything. What's your take?
The CPP, we were invited to the dialogue and we chose not to participate. We chose not to participate because the failure of this dialogue was in its design, in the way that the dialogue was set up. You cannot have a dialogue on this kind of complex problem involving so many actors without preparation. So first of all, calling for this dialogue in 3 weeks' time for a crisis which we had for over 3 years was already a sign that something was wrong. Secondly, you cannot use the word dialogue. Then one person decides on the date of the dialogue, the agenda of the dialogue, the participants of the dialogue, and then that person himself does not attend the dialogue. And the resolutions of the dialogue will only be handed to him for him again to pick and choose which elements of those resolutions he is going to implement. This is not nowhere in any dictionary can you call this a dialogue.
But there were representatives from different parts of Cameroon and out of the country, the diaspora.
You had the same people who have caused this crisis. That is the ruling elite of the CPDM, who then took pains to invite a few people to try to give us a masquerade, I can put it that way, and who came together. It is clear that there was no intention, there was not even the possibility. You cannot have a situation in Cameroon. We have over 500,000 people who are displaced in this country from that Anglophone crisis. Another 300,000 from the extreme north. Where were they at the dialogue? You have refugees from this crisis, over 50,000 in Nigeria. Where were they at the dialogue? Where were the people who are shooting? If we are in crisis today, it is because we have armed groups who are shooting and a government who is shooting. Where was the discussion about ceasefire? The most important point that had to be discussed in that dialogue, because everything else comes after ceasefire.
Tens of separatist fighters were presented to us at the national dialogue. So Mr. Babila,
we are tired. We are tired of the charade of this government, and I can tell you, at the level of Cameroon People's Party, at the level of Stand Up for Cameroon, no, we are not playing games anymore. We are not going to participate in these games, because this is the same government who presented fake Transparency International observers. This is the same way they went and presented fake Amber fighters. It is not a secret that they are Amber fighters. They are real. They are on the ground. People know who they are. They themselves know who they are. If they were represented in that dialogue, if there was any type of real representation of Amber fighters, they would have halted the fighting to even see what the dialogue would produce. There was fighting going on when Mr. Biya called for the dialogue, before the dialogue, during the dialogue, and immediately as they finished the dialogue, shooting was going on all over the place. So what do we call that? And the killings, of course, have continued. The killings, atrocities have continued after the dialogue. And I think that Cameroonians, we are not measuring what is really happening to our communities. We are not measuring what is happening. This beheading, this atrocious killing of a fellow human being, do we realize what it's doing to our society? I keep asking the question, Where are we going to keep these young men whom we have taught to kill? Whether they are in the army and have burned down homes and have killed people, or whether they are with the armed groups. These are children. Most of them are less than 25 years old. Some of them are as young as 15, 14 years old. What are we going to do with them afterwards? What are you going to do with a child who has split somebody in half? How does a society repair itself from that? And how can we continue to live with a government who does not see that as an urgency, as a situation to be treated? I think that if anybody still had even a little bit of faith in this government, that dialogue abolished it completely. However, because you see a government whose people are dying, whose people are suffering, and they choose to spend a lot of money gathering people together for something which is futile.
So futile, it means that
completely
it's not
futile.
Going to produce
it's not going
result.
to. Well, Mr. Babila, in a dialogue, if you had a dialogue and you had the parties concerned around the table, you will not be sitting here asking me if it will produce. If you had the proper people around that table talking, if you had the people who were shooting, they would have come out immediately and told you what they were going to do. One of the questions that we asked, and the reason we refused to go to the dialogue, was in what way are the decisions taken in the dialogue going to be binding?
Of course, there are recommendations.
No, but then it's not a dialogue. When you and I dialogue, we come to an agreement. We don't dialogue together and then go and make recommendations to somebody else. Mr. Biya is not a king. He is a head of state.
And quickly,
this is not a kingdom.
Quickly, I want to have your take on one of the major recommendations, the special status for the Northwest and the Southwest regions.
The special status is an absurdity. It is a very big mistake. It will aggravate the problems for Cameroon. An absurdity because you cannot say you waited 3 years and with over 2,000 people dead to go and take out one line which has been existing in a constitution since 1996, and that is the solution you are proposing to end this crisis. That is number one. Number two, it puts us back into that dictatorship of Mr. Biya, because there is absolutely no content to special status. You don't know whether it means more budget. You don't know whether it means more autonomy. You don't know what you have no idea what it actually means. And why I say it will aggravate the problem for Cameroon is because we know that even if we have a very dire situation in the Northwest and Southwest regions, that all the other regions of Cameroon are suffering. So what are you telling them? What are you telling them? Are you telling them that they should also take up arms to solve their problem so that they can get a special status? I think we saw in the days after the far north calling for a special status, and they are right, because you cannot be solving your problems piecemeal. And that is why we talk about political transition. Political transition will enable us to put all the problems on the table.
And the political transition will definitely produce results if there is a return to normalcy, if those who are being released, like you heard the president of PAP saying that those who have been detained should be released, there should be a ceasefire, there should be general amnesty, and so on.
Absolutely. But I want to say two things. The political transition that we're talking about is the actual long-term solution for Cameroon. It is to go to the root of our problems, not to do a window dressing. Because political transition, step one, means the Biya regime must go. This regime has failed and failed and failed and continues to fail, and it is dragging Cameroonians down to where we never could imagine that we would ever reach. So one, they must go. Two, we must then hold a dialogue, a proper dialogue, as we see other countries doing. In other countries, dialogue is a 3-month, 6-month process with preparatory dialogue before you get to the major national dialogue.
I wanted to emphasize a little bit on step 1.
Yes.
Paul Biya must go.
Yes.
That's what you said.
Yes.
This regime must go.
Yes.
How? Because the only way, as of now, officially, is by the ballot box.
No, it is not the only way.
Officially, according to...
What we see in every country that has had to face a dictator. I'm very happy because I just recently was able to meet with the activists in Sudan who were able to get Mr. Omar Bashir to go after 30 years. And they informed us the only way to get a dictator out is for the people to rise up. We see it. Cameroonians, just lift your head and you look around you, you will see Burkina Faso, Algeria, Tunisia, Sudan. That is how you get rid of a dictator. Nobody has ever gotten rid of a dictator through the ballot box. It does not work. And our situation today in Cameroon is that all of the groups who are suffering, Cameroonians should stop with this discussion about ethnicity and this and that. We are only 2 groups. Those in power, who are composed of all the 10 regions of Cameroon, who carried out their national dialogue, we saw them there, and those who are victims of their governance. So it is when we come together, all of us who are suffering, the Anglophone with the Francophone, the Bamileke with the Bulu, the Northerner with the Southerner, when we who are suffering come together and say, these people must go, they will go.
These people must go. Cameroonians should rise up and kick out the present regime, but that has often been interpreted by some as a call for violence, a call for insurrection and things like that, and that could be that's punishable by the law.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The cases I have cited to you, once again I ask Cameroonians, please lift up your head and watch the news and see what is happening around. In Burkina Faso, we did not see violence. In Algeria, we did not see violence. In Sudan, we saw violence from the regime. Over 100 people were killed in Sudan, and so some are estimating up to 250 were killed by the soldiers. But the people still rose up. Today, they have taken their country back. People are afraid in Cameroon, the violence from the state, but we are dying.
All right,
I keep asking, those dying in the northwest and southwest every day, are they not people?
Political transition, step 2.
Step 2 is, as I have said, dialogue, for us to actually sit. You know, we never built a Cameroonian nation. We have never had an opportunity as Cameroonians, from north to south, Anglophone, Francophone, to sit together and to say, what is the nation that we want? So that is what we call a national dialogue. Step 3 is that we reform the institutions. Because today, we talk of Sangmelima, incidents in Sangmelima. People see ethnic groups fighting one another, but they should understand what is happening. Sangmelima first cause is failure of the justice system. Because if your justice system is not a joke, then you will not, as a population, see somebody who is dead and decide to take justice into your own hands. If you have a functional justice system, you see somebody who is dead, you go to the police.
And that's very recurrent everywhere.
And
you have
this popular justice.
You have a suspected bandit, a suspected thief arrested, jungle justice.
And it is because of the failure of the justice system from this regime. People have to realize that those young men, I keep emphasizing that the young men who are being recruited by Boko Haram, the young men who are being recruited to kill in the northwest and southwest, the young men who were in Sangmelima, they are the same young men. These are the same young men. All over Cameroon, we have millions of young men to whom we have not been able to give hope, to give opportunity as a society. They don't have jobs. They are not in school. They don't see a future in front of themselves. So it means that they are a breeding ground for anybody to come and recruit them to do any kind of horrific things, which is what is happening in our country today. So we must reform institutions within the political transition process so that we have a functional justice, so that we have a functional government that can provide jobs, that can provide water. Look at the paper you just showed of that woman not being able to have her house being flooded completely in Yaoundé, in the capital city of our country. So we must have a functional government, and we must reform for the electoral system. Impossible. Peacefully, is fair or not, you must have an electoral system that works. And finally, then after this reform, you can talk about holding elections. But a very important point, Mr. Babila, throughout this process and at the level of Stand Up for Cameroon, we have already started this step, is what we call Cameroonian conversations. Training, informing, and educating the citizen. Because what we are seeing in all of these incidents, from Sangmelima to the other people I saw going to see a snake that had made a road to fall and so on, is that our citizens are not educated. Our citizens are not informed. Our citizens don't know that they have rights, that they must hold government accountable. They don't know all of these things. So
where's the problem? Is it in the educational system? Is it in the school curricula and so on?
Of course, the current regime thrives on ignorance. The more ignorant you are, the better for them. Because you don't ask them questions, they don't have to give you any accounts. They can look at a question which is not being asked. How much did the national dialogue cost? It's our money. It's our money which these people wasted to do nothing for 1 week's time. That money belongs to us. They were supposed to give us account. They have taken it and distributed to people, and we are hearing one funny story here, the next funny story over there. That's our money. So we have to educate citizens. Citizens must know that they have the right to demand account from government. It's not a favor. The country does not belong to them, it belongs to us. We are all Cameroonians.
Asking for account.
Yes.
How? By taking to the streets?
In political transition, the first step, as I've said, is to get rid of the regime. If you don't get rid of the regime, you can go nowhere in the next steps. And we all know this today, and that's our call at Stand Up for Cameroon, is to demand of Cameroonians, all of whom are fighting for justice in this country, that we come together and first and foremost ask this regime peacefully, non-violently, step down. The problems are so far beyond you. Please step down.
Is it feasible?
It is absolutely feasible.
Looking at the context of Cameroon today,
oh sure,
and the repression that protesters often suffer.
Of course, it is feasible. It is feasible in all of the countries I've cited, from Sudan to Algeria to Tunisia to Burkina Faso. Nobody ever imagined that it was possible in those countries. It is feasible, and our job today, I would say to Cameroonians, be careful. I see electoral agitations going on, and Cameroonians should not allow themselves once more to be swindled. This is what we call learning to ask for account. We went to the last election. What happened? What has changed since that last election that will permit us to go for another election? Has ELECAM changed in its composition? Has the electoral system changed? Has the Ministry of Territorial Administration changed?
The authorities say ELECAM is independent.
Has the Constitutional Council changed?
To the authorities, there's no need for any change.
But to Cameroonians, there's a problem. Cameroonians saw it live. I remember the day that we were watching the appeals at the Constitutional Council. We saw it live that this system does not work for us. It works to keep a group of people in power. So to go in again for that system is to betray Cameroonians. To go in again for elections in this country is to betray Cameroonians. It's to tell Cameroonians that, well, it doesn't matter as long as I am mayor, as long as I am a parliamentarian or a senator, that is what matters, but not the fundamentals of the country.
What you're saying now is that Cameroonians should not go in for the upcoming elections in the present context with the present state of things, but you could be accused there of promoting voter apathy.
I am even amazed that I have to say it. I am amazed that I have to say it. I don't know what would make Cameroonians to go in for another election. We have just gone through an election. What was the result? What was the result of that election? The result within the electoral system is that we all saw there was fraud. We all saw that the elections were improperly organized, very, very badly organized. We all saw that you went to a court of appeals which does not listen to your appeal and takes its own decision. We all saw that when those who protested afterwards had the courtesy of being guests of Kondengi prison for 9 months. That was the result of the election. That is within the electoral system itself. And then you have the case of the situation in the northwest and southwest regions. You remember that the CPP said we are not going in for these elections as long as this problem is not resolved. So the question I have for anybody going into this election, and we turned out to be correct, deaths increased tremendously during this electoral period. The northwest and the southwest regions were unable to vote during this electoral period. And we saw all of the catastrophe. Now, if you are going in for elections as a political leader, the only question I have, parliamentary elections, do you believe that in whom they will be able to hold municipal and parliamentary elections? We must put the nation on hold and solve our fundamental problems.
But staying away, some politicians like yourself think that staying away is not helping the situation. Staying away from elections is not solving the problem. You need to be there to fight and to continue fighting.
To do what? To do what? I would all ask that person to do what? To do what that political parties have not done in 30 years. We have had opposition. Opposition has been in this parliament for the last 30 years. 30. They have been in parliament. What have they changed? Opposition mayors have been controlling councils for the last 30 years. What have they been able to change under the current system? This is the system that had a constitution that decentralized. That was our social contract. That constitution, people forget, was something that came out of a time of political unrest. And Mr. Biya called us for a dialogue as he did again the other day. And the contract, the product of it was the Constitution of 1996. He has not implemented it. It is the lack of implementation of that contract that has brought us to crisis again here today. So it is just amazing to me when people say, I'm going for a dialogue and we'll see what happens. What do you mean we'll see? After 30 years?
But some people listening to Kabanwala Edit now will just see, but the whole thing is hopeless. The whole thing is, in fact, there's no way out.
It is not hopeless. It is not hopeless. What we have to do is, one, you can no longer say I'm staying away. As I hear Cameroonians say, I'm apolitical. I don't belong to any political party. No. Here now, and it's not a question of politics. This is a question of citizenship. This is a question of the country. We are not calling you to ask you to vote for Madame Kawala or to vote for X, Y, or Z. We are calling you for us to build the foundation of our country together. So you must join a movement. You must educate yourself, because non-violence, you need to understand it. You need to be trained on it. You need to be able to take non-violent action intelligently. 3 is that we must join hands. The time we have been calling for this as Stand Up for Cameroon, that please, and that is where elections don't make sense. Elections are by nature divisive, because you have your party, I have my party, we start fighting against each other. How do we go for a football match without drawing the lines on the field, without picking an objective referee, without having a standard sized ball? That is what we are asking Cameroonians today to do. Not to go for the tournament yet, for us to build the field,
to make sure that the field
the field respects the norms. And there are some people in power who have been stopping us from making sure that the field respects the norms for 37 years. We must ask them politely to leave, so that we can draw the field. And this requires everybody. No, we will not be able to do it alone. No group of people will be able to do it alone. And this is what we have seen in these other countries. It is when the ordinary citizen joins with the political party, joins with the trade union, joins with the civil society. Look at the pictures coming out of Guinea. Look at the pictures coming out of Guinea, of Guineans who say no to Mr. Alpha Condé to change their constitution. Cameroonians have to understand that there are fights which are not the fight of a political party. They are not the fight of individuals. They are our fight as Cameroonians, and that is what we need to be about at this stage if we want to save our country.
Cameroonians should rise up. Cameroonians should stand up for Cameroon, but no violence.
Absolutely no violence. It's not necessary. We take our country back and our destiny back without violence.
Thanks, Kabanwala Edith. You're the national president of the Cameroon People's Party. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. A pleasure to be here as usual.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today.